Hey guys, this is the Academic Christian, also known as Chandler King. Where on this channel we look at things from a scholarly perspective, a research-based perspective, and a biblical perspective. It's been a while since we've last talked. I may start making it where on Sundays I do something like this for people who may not have a church home, or people who during COVID might be scared to go out to church. And so I think that this is a pretty good way to spread the message of the gospel along with, meeting new people. This is one thing that's very interesting. This can be spread to all parts of the world just through YouTube and the internet, which is amazing. So today I want to talk about the most concerning issues facing, well, not issue facing Christianity today. Um, this is one thing, and I really made a video for this because, people who know me know I've had to take a break from all this because of just grad school work has been rough this semester dealing with all the different science classes I got. I've been having to put a lot of attention towards it. But even with that being said, I feel that a lot of people, Christians are fighting the wrong fight. I feel like there's a lot of problems facing Christianity today, but people get off on these little tangents and these little other things, and we got a serious issue that is more concerning than a lot of things that are facing our society today. And so I'm going to get started basically using a Pew research study to explain exactly what I think. So let's go ahead. Let's get into this. I look forward to starting this with you. So a lot of people sit there and are like, hey, the biggest issue with Christianity today is something like, let's say, political. They're like, okay, well, it's these certain issues where Christianity is very politicized. And, you know, I don't like that. We're going to get into that more later on. But the biggest issue that is facing our, Christianity today, especially in the U.S., and, of course, other countries as well. So if you're from another country, this is probably relevant to you too. But this research study was done in the United States. But, a lot of the world in different places in Europe, in places that, in Asia, all these other countries, you see a lot of secular nations that are starting to come about. Now, in the past, we've talked about, hey, is a secular society safer than a Christian one? We went into all these details and we looked at more than one description. And so we've looked at that in the past. But the biggest issue that is facing our society today, especially in the United States, has to deal with our youth. You see, we're failing to spread our message to our younger ones. And, it wasn't too long ago that I was younger. I'm still in my 20s. And so one thing that is really concerning is out of everyone that goes to church and has children, well, not everyone, but from the study itself, which had over about 1,000, close to 2,000 people. It was 1,800 if I'm remembering it correctly. Only 48% of teens say that they have the same religious beliefs as their parents. So coming down and noticing things, that's half of that whole group, less than half. That is concerning if that's something that is facing the whole nation. Granted, we can't look at this one study and say that, but it's something I've even noticed going to church. You're not seeing as many young people show up. And especially people in their 20s, you really don't see people starting to show up. You're starting to see a lot less of them now. And when I was growing up, it wasn't that way. When I was a child, you're noticing this big gap that's starting to happen, and there are reasons for that we'll get into a little bit later on. So along with this, 38% of that whole group said they wanted to be, or that they were there just because their parents wanted them to be there. Not only that, the most concerning out of it all is 45% of teens believe that many religions can be true. And don't get me wrong, if you're from a different religion, you're very welcome here. This is not me insulting you. This is not anything else. I actually find beauty in some other religions. I do believe Christianity to be the one true religion, but I believe that there is beauty that is seen in other cultures, which is something that's very interesting and that I differ with a lot of other Christians. So let me go ahead and explain exactly how this happened and the biggest issues I've known with people that are my age group, the people that are in their 20s, that are millennials, 20s and 30s, probably Generation Z people too. But this is something I can speak of from my own experience and what I see and what I feel is hurting Christianity and where we're fighting the wrong fight. The biggest thing is our country's divided on all issues. And so this channel will never be a political one. I will say this, though. We have it split where some people are on the left and some people are on the right. And there's not much middle ground. If you differ on certain issues, people hate you. You know, when I grew up and all this, I felt this country was a lot better off in some ways. Even though I'm in my 20s, you know, there were some people, regardless of what they believed, they could have been someone who was on the left or on the right, and it was regardless of what you believe, I may not agree with you, but I'm willing to stand up for you regardless of your beliefs. There's actually a saying, too, that I may not agree with what you believe, but I'm willing to die for your right to say it. We've lost that. We've lost that. And the thing is there's a way to be firm and there's a way to be kind. There's a way that you can stand up in a strong way, but a kind way. And both sides have really forgotten that. I'm not going to ever say who's right or wrong. It's not my place. And this is the one thing that a lot of people, this goes into the next issue. We set guidelines for who can and can't be Christian. I notice people on both sides, both, people on the left and on the right. They're like, well, you can't believe this way and be a Christian because of this. You can't believe this way and be a Christian because of that. And it's on both sides. It's not just one side. It is on both sides. You can't just point the finger. A lot of people like to throw the rock, and when it hits someone, they like to hide their hand and point to the other side. That's basically what our society has become today. And I've gotten tired of it, which is why I'm speaking on it now, because this is something that is messing our youth up. It's not even a Christian issue. It's an issue of being a loving society in general. Even if you're on this channel and you're an atheist, you don't agree with probably hardly anything I say, but you got to admit that the hatred that we have against each other is tearing us apart. And a lot of people I've even known who are on the left and the right are like, well, I am like this because there's not an easy way for us to step down. It's a pride thing. It's getting to where it's a pride thing. It's nothing else, and it's becoming something that's really upsetting. But people set guidelines for who can and can't be Christian. Like, hey, if you believe this way on this issue, you can't be Christian because of this. We do this because of this. One thing that I find very interesting, one thing that was very interesting about Christ, about Jesus, you notice he stood up for human rights issues, but he never spoke about political issues. One of the only times he mentioned something was about taxation, about dealing with taxes. That was it. At least to my knowledge. I'm not going to act like I'm the smartest person in the room. I'm really the only person in the room. But you get what I mean. He was someone, if he had the power, he could have taken over the government, everything else, because he was all powerful and he was the Son of God. But you know what he did? People expected him to be this man who came out, he was going to take things by force. That's what they thought. They're like, he's going to be a king. Yes, he's my king. He died on the cross so that we could be saved. That's the difference. This was not something, he could have very easily been someone who was a politician. The influence that he had, he could have very easily been this way. But he wasn't. And he wasn't because Christianity is not meant to be politicized, and we turned it into that. Both sides are to blame. Not just that. The division happens among atheists and Christians, too. And, I've seen atheists say, and I'm going to point the finger at both, so don't think I'm going to attack one and not go for the other. I've seen some atheists, they're like, well, you can't be Christian because of this, you're immoral because of that. And that's not right, especially if it's someone's beliefs. And also, if they have a reason to believe it, and they're at least doing their best to be kind, there's no reason to speak like that. We can put it in a kind manner. Now, Christians don't think you're off the hook because also we do the same thing to atheists, which is very wrong. A lot of people are like, you can't be moral without God. You can't be this way. You can't be a good person without God. And don't get me wrong. If you ask my belief, the best person that you can be is with God, following God's laws and rules. That doesn't mean you can't be a good person. I think we need God in a lot of things and a lot of issues, but I've known a lot of atheists who are very kind people, and I really don't appreciate when Christians do say that. So, there's issues all across the aisle, but, that's getting off topic because we're dealing right now with what is the biggest issue pressing Christianity. Also, thing is division among the church. This has been going on for generations, though. That's the biggest thing. Not only have we have politicized Christianity when it's never meant to be politicized in general. We've already established Christ was not a politician. He was the Son of God who died on the cross for us to be saved. But there's division among our own church. I've known people that are like, you can't be Christian and you're if you are a part of this type of congregation. If you are someone, let's say, who's a Catholic, you can't be saved. If you're Baptist, you can't be saved. And it goes through all this instead of like, okay, let's talk in a friendly manner about these issues. The requirement to be a Christian is believing that Christ died on the cross and was resurrected, that he died for our sins and was raised from the dead and defeated death. That's what it takes to be a Christian. All these petty issues that we have sat there and have established on our own, I can't prove this is all correlated, but I can pretty well guess it pretty well. It's a good educated guess of how Christianity right now is starting to crumble a little. The final thing is we fail to do research on our own. I'm a Christian. I'm college educated. I got a bachelor's degree. I got this semester and next semester I'll have my master's degree dealing with health sciences. And then, health and exercise sciences, things like kinese, exercise physiology, obviously nutrition stuff. You could, talk about the validity of that degree or not, especially in a science field, because there are harder sciences like physics and all that out there. But I at least can think in a sort of scientific manner, if you get what I mean. Pretty soon, my GPA, everything else is going to be good enough for me to have a doctorate degree. I'm going to apply for it, and everything's looking good for that too. But we fail to do our own research. The only reason I'm pointing that out, I'm not bragging by any means. I'm showing that I understand the research process. I understand the scientific method. I understand all these different things. And then this is one problem we also have that makes Christians look very foolish, is we sit there, we'll put something and someone's like, oh, well, science is the way of trying to explain what God did. And they're like, I don't put stock in science. I've noticed some Christians say that, and I'm like, what are you doing? What on earth are you doing? Like, don't get me wrong. If I'm Christian, I obviously believe that God created the universe. You know, you got some people who are Christian that might believe in evolution and that the Genesis was more of a metaphor. I've known some people who don't think it's a metaphor, that maybe evolution was true. Things took longer because it mentions in the Bible in a chapter that time in God's perspective is different than ours. And so it was a metaphor for the different days, and it was symbolic for the seventh day of rest. I've known people point all this stuff out and why they believe certain ways about certain issues. That doesn't make them less Christian, but I've also seen people. It kind of gets me upset because you're really now pushing it where you're trying to. It makes you not look smart. There's not any other way to put it, because it's like, obviously, if you have to go to the doctor, you're going to go to the doctor. And that obviously you're not anti-science because you believe in, hey, if I got this, I need to go. But you're making it seem like it is. You're making it seem like we don't believe in science because you're like, oh, this is because of this. And I'm telling you, Christians need to stop that. Even if you believe, hey, it was the way of explaining how God did things, it is not a good look when you say it. One other thing, really two other things. I've mentioned this in another video, but I hate not to have mentioned scripture in any of this, because this is a channel that is a biblical channel. So I mentioned in a past video about things. I can't remember exactly which video, but Jude 1:22 tells you to have mercy on those who doubt. So one other thing, I've noticed some parents are forceful when their kids are starting to doubt God. They don't believe in God. And the thing is, if you're forceful, you push them away forever. You push them away forever. I've known families that are like that. I've known good people that are like that, and their family was way too forceful when they doubted. And the chance of them ever believing again is going to be very slim. Now, don't get me wrong. I think you ought to bring your child to church. I think you ought to teach the Bible, because let's understand things from a psychological perspective. You are a product of your parents in some ways. And don't get me wrong, I don't believe in brainwashing children. I don't believe in any of that. But in some way, you're going to influence your kid's life, regardless of what you believe. If you don't believe in God, you're going to influence your child, and they're not going to believe in God. It's the same thing for people who believe in God. They're going to be more likely to believe in God because they grew up in a Christian home. That's just how that works. So, yeah, don't get me wrong. I think you ought to, bring your child to church, teach them to be a better person, love them, do all those different things. Have mercy on them, though. Sit back. If they doubt, if they question, let them know you love them. Let them know you love them, that they're brave. And if they had any questions, you can ask me. Don't make it a charity case. Don't sit there and be like, oh my gosh, my baby. And I understand that's a sad thing if it's a parent. It's a very sad thing, but if you are too forceful, you can push them away. I want to end also with Ephesians 6:4. And this goes into this too, because I've never used this. But when talking about your children, and especially why you shouldn't be forceful, God, if you've read the Bible, let me do this before I go into this. God, it's the ultimate love story of how a father saw their children mess up. They sinned. All throughout times, he's given them chance after chance after chance until he himself, we call him the triunity. Yes, Jesus is seen as the Son, but he's also seen as God too. He died, was nailed to the cross. He died for us. So basically, God sacrificed himself in a way so that he could save his children. It's the ultimate love story anyone could ever write. The thing is, too, you should never be. The Bible actually commands you not to be forceful with your children. It teaches you to love them, to discipline them, to teach them to act right. But there's a verse in the Bible, if you read Ephesians 6:4, it says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in discipline and instruction of the Lord." We push our children away sometimes. We do all these things that are wrong. All these issues that I mentioned, I can't prove it's a correlation with everything that's happened in our society, why people are not believing. But these are issues that I've seen, and I feel like they do correlate. If there was a study done on this, I bet you, I'd be willing to almost bet money that all of these issues are relevant to why it is. And why we sit here, we pick fights about things that don't matter. And I'm not saying they don't matter. Look, if you believe in something, especially political and stuff, you stand up for that issue. I'm not saying you should believe one way or the other. But I'm saying about things relevant to Christianity, we sit there and pick fights about, and it pushes the younger group away. And at this point, I almost don't blame them. I don't mean that as I'm not Christian. I'm Christian. I probably will be till the day I die. But we push them away. Our society, we push them. We take their innocence. We teach each other to hate each other when we should be loving each other. People who are atheist and people who are Christian, we've both failed our children, like our younger generation. And I'm not just talking about this issue with Christianity, but in general, in our livelihood, teaching them how to love each other, we've failed miserably. And I can't act like we've had the best track record when, Christians, when it was during ancient eras. But that's why we should strive to do better. Anyway, I love you guys. I hope you're doing well in the world. If you feel like you're messaging me, you need to talk about anything, I'm here. I'm open. I love you guys. And, I hope you have a good one. This one had a lot of bombs on it. I probably triggered someone or a few people, probably everyone. But, the thing is, you should never stray from the truth. Christ never did, even when people didn't want to hear it. Much peace, much love. Bye, guys.